All right, boys and girls, so I may have hit you with the clickbait on the title a little bit. As it turns out, I don't think you can restore a truck in 3 days. At least, not do a good job. I could make that truck run and drive in 3 days, but it would still be a piece of junk. It would just be a running and driving piece of junk. So, what we might be able to do in 3 days is restore this cab, which, if you saw my last video, you know is in pretty rough shape and needs a lot of work. However, we got 3 days, and we are going to go for it. So stick with me. This is going to be fun. We have a ton of work to do. Howdy, gang. Welcome back to Ran When Parked. Today is episode number 2, or maybe 3, I guess, on the 76 Crew Cab project here, my dent side crew. And today we are going to be tacking these floors. Now, I have to admit, I did do a little bit of work off camera. I removed the stupid diamond plate running boards. I took the pedal box out, took the master and the booster off. I took the dash apart, or at least the good stuff out of the dash to protect it while I was welding. And I stripped out the rest of the interior, took the seat belts off, except for these rears, which I can't get the bolts out for, so we'll deal with that later. And now it is all ready to hack up the floors and put new floor pans in. The driver's side I have right there. So, I do have to say, now that I've completely stripped it, it is a little bit worse than I thought, but nothing show-stopping. I'll give you a couple examples. Before, we thought the inner rockers were perfectly solid. They are missing a little bit here, but I can put a strip in, and honestly, it's such a pain in the butt to do the inner rockers, and considering the fact that the whole rest of them is perfect, I would never want to replace the inner rocker just for that strip. So that's kind of a no-brainer. Also, the rock goes a little further past the actual floor pan than I thought, so we're going to be fabricating a couple more little pieces than I thought. There's another one there I didn't see before. And also on the passenger side, it goes up the tranny tunnel, the rot that is, a little bit further than I thought. So I'm almost going to be going all the way into this radius, which kind of sucks. But, you know, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. We're going to start with the driver's floor. So let's get going, see how much we can get done in today's episode. Okay, guys, so general rule of thumb, you want to use the minimal amount of pan possible just to make your life easier, really. But in this situation, we're going to be using like the whole pan. So this pan goes from the firewall seam right there all the way back to right here, from the rocker all the way up the tranny tunnel, or I guess most of the way up the tranny tunnel. It does stop before the radius at some point. So there's a couple things I want to eliminate, I guess, although I don't really want to modify the truck at all. This is a factory 4-speed truck, and I'd like to make it so you could just put it back to all factory. Like, I don't want to make any non-OEM changes. However, I am going to block the clutch hole in the floor, only because you could always put it back in very, very, very easy. There's the seal for it. So I am going to get rid of that, or maybe I'll leave it. We'll decide that at the last second. I could always just plug it with something later, like a pop riveted in plate or something, just to keep it completely original. I don't know. We'll figure that out when we get to it. But these things have a T. I'm assuming T for truck in the floor. So does the new pan. Kind of nice. And that's cool because you can measure off of it. So we're basically going to be drawing a line across the firewall somewhere where we're going to be cutting it. We will not be going all the way up to the seam because we don't need to. We have a ton of good metal in here. There's really nothing wrong with it at all. And then we'll draw a line down the side here. In the back, I have just barely enough material so that I won't have to remake this curve. So I will try to cut it really close to that radius, weld the new pan in, and then we'll fix the top here later. Obviously, back here is going to have to be a separate piece. And then before we put the pan in, we will fabricate this little strip right here that goes along. But yeah, that's about that. We're going to have to scribe a line and decide where we're going to cut this thing, get all the rust out, and then we'll talk about next steps. So let's get moving. Okay, guys, so we got it all cut out. Now we have a gigantic hole in the floor, which is good. And what we're noticing here is that the front driver's side cab mount is a little shot in the back. It's okay. I can save this one. This structure down here doesn't really do anything. It's really just that flange. And that flange is where it's spot welded to the floor. Those are in really good shape. So I'll build another flange across the back, and that'll spot weld into the floor, and that'll be fine. The other side I am noticing is shot, though, so I already went ahead and ordered a new one. If you're wondering how I went under the truck and sandblasted everything and never noticed that the front cab mounts were damaged like this, That's a great question. Can't answer it. Very sorry. So I did decide to just cut straight across right here. Yeah, that's going to work out well. I will trim this into the other floorboard at some point. So our next steps probably are going to be to clean up a little bit, get this thing cleaned up and painted because you're never going to see it again, drill out the spot welds on all the sides, fix that, and then we will put a flange down this thing. Although I do believe actually this floor has enough material to go all the way to the edge, which would be kind of cool. So it would change the originality of it, but it would be the logical thing to do. And then we'll start trimming our floorboard and getting it in here. And remember, guys, when you're doing this, this is like a measure 10 times, cut once type situation. You don't want to screw this up. So we'll go through it. Let's get the driver's side floorboard in. Then we can move on to the passenger side. Okay, guys, so we got her trimmed. Fits pretty freaking awesome. I actually more or less nailed it, but I did make a couple of mistakes. For one, you saw me go trace from the outside. Well, I didn't push this corner down when I was doing it, and therefore we have a little bit of a gap. Not much. I can fix that. No big deal. It's actually really good across here still because I actually left some material there. I do have a gap back here also, but I can fix that. Also, I think that's a little low. I think it just needs to come up. All the way around here, we're pretty much dead on, and it does in fact have enough material to come all the way to the edge, so I don't even have to make a flange there. I'm just gonna have to drill new screws or new holes in it for the screws that hold the trim plate down on top of that. So what we'll do is just trace that out, cut the flange out, and weld it straight into the rocker. We'll be good to go there. And then we got to do something about this corner, but that's okay. I just have to match it. Right here, I also have to trim a little bit out. I left it a little heavy, but you'd always rather leave it heavy than be light. It's a whole lot easier to cut some material out than to add material in. So this thing's just sitting here. It's just got one clamp under it here and then a jack holding that side up from the bottom. And you can see like it's in there. That's exactly how it's supposed to fit. So there's our solution for the driver's side. I do not want to weld this thing in just yet because the Pour 15 is going to be here tomorrow. I ran out and I want to Pour 15 the inside of the cab mount before I weld it in because I'll never be able to access it again, and that'll be a permanent solution. So instead of finishing this side, we're going to go cut apart the other side and start trimming it out. That way, when I'm ready to weld, I just weld both of them. Although that side needs a cab mount too, so that's going to get interesting. But we still have a lot of cutting to do, so let's go cut out the passenger side. What is up, guys? Welcome to day 2. Got my coffee. Just heading out to the shop. Gonna turn the heat on and stuff, but we do have a little bit of a hurdle, and that is that it is raining. It was supposed to be nice all weekend, and that's convenient because the Land Cruiser is gonna go outside so I can work on this thing. I don't want the Land Cruiser out in the rain. But it rained on Friday and it rained today, so I don't know what's up with the weather, but I guess being a weatherman is the best job in the world. It's the only job I know of where you could be wrong all the time and no one even thinks twice. So what we're going to do is head into the shop here. We're going to get the heat going, and then I'm going to shuffle some cars around the stable here, get the Land Cruiser outside somewhere secured in the other garage or something, I don't know. And then maybe cover up the 63 because it's out there. But either way, we're going to figure out a way to get the crew cab back out over here and continue on day 2 of our 3-day cab restoration project. So bear with me. I got to drink my coffee, get the heat going out here, and I'll be right back. Mission number 1 accomplished. The Land Cruiser is safe and sound and not in the rain, and the crew cab is out and ready to work on for the day. So let's kick off day 2 of metal fab on this thing. First thing I should probably do, weld the passenger floor in. If you guys remember from yesterday, the driver's floor, I need to pour 15 the inside of the mount. So it's all trimmed and ready to weld. I just don't want to weld it yet. Pour 15 should be here today. The passenger floor, we're going to replace the front mount, so that means I can weld it in because I'll have access to the inside of that mount before I spot weld it to the floor, and you can't spot weld it in until you put the floor pan in. So we can put this floor pan in, then we'll start fabricating these pieces. Hopefully we can get the seat belts out and do the back pieces, and then I want to move on. But before we do that, I'm going to do something a little different just to break up this episode. Do you guys remember this drip rail damage? Well, yesterday, after I was done filming, I actually fixed the other side, which I'll show you in a little while, but I want to show you guys how to fix something like that because that looks a little insurmountable. It is cracked on the bottom, but I have a method because I already did the other side. So let's start there. All right, so the drip rail's straight, and we'll show you the other side real quick that I fixed last night. It came out actually even better. The damage wasn't quite as bad, but it's like perfect, which is awesome. And also it pulled out the dent that was in here, which is really awesome. Now the bad news on this side is it exposed some rust that was not visible before. So you couldn't really see that this was rusty. You couldn't even see that it was rusty here. When I pulled it back, it pulled the dent out and it cracked it. So that sucks because the whole reason we bought this cab was because it didn't have roof rust. However, it's 10 million times better than the red cab still. And I just went around with a fine-tooth comb and double-checked everywhere else, and there is none else. And also, you can feel up from the inside here, I'll never be able to get it on camera, but you can feel that there's no rust on the inside. It's all good. So we'll just cut there and cut there and cut across the top and take a section of roof out of one of the roof cuts that we got with the red truck. So that's going to be that. And I'll probably just replace that section of drip rail while I do it because that's just the easiest thing to do. So that'll be a later thing. We're definitely not going to get that done in the next couple of days because I have to think about the best way to do it. But I think that's really the only way to fix that correctly. So now that the drip rails are sorted out, or at least the driver's side is, let's start working on that floor. Okay, so we have the floor kind of dialed in here. It does need a little bit more work. We got it aligned in our corners and stuff. And what I basically did was I traced a secondary line here. So we just need to cut a little bit more out of the truck side to make this thing fit absolutely perfect. So I'm going to break out the angle grinder, cut a little bit more out, and then we'll get this thing clamped in and then it is on to tack welding. So that'll be exciting. Let's keep it moving. So passenger floor is pretty much done. The reason I say pretty much done is because it's welded all the way around the front, all the way around the back and up. However, this piece is just too rusty. The gap ended up being too big, so that's a big factor. But also this piece is just shot. Like the further I go, the more it just keeps burning away. And you can see like it's rusty there and rusty there, which I didn't even notice before. So what we're gonna do is just cut that out of the other truck because this piece is actually good in the other truck. We'll save that for later because it's pouring rain outside and I'm not gonna go out there and cut right now. And then right here I didn't finish just because I'm not sure how it's gonna lay into here. I think I'm gonna fold this piece around the corner, which is why I kept this piece really long in the first place. I might as well have everything I can there. But everything else is done. So it's all set. Looks good. This is where you do 50 million hours of grinding. In other news, the Ford 15 hasn't showed up, but the metal prep did. So I sprayed that with, I think it's phosphoric acid. And that'll etch the rust and convert it. And then we can wash that down, paint it, and then tack the driver's floor in. But while we're waiting for that to dry, I figure we might as well just keep moving. So let's make this piece. I think what we're going to wind up doing is cutting it off like perfectly square. So I just have one square piece, and then I'll just weld it in one chunk or maybe two chunks. And this little gap here, form here, valley if you will be the gap between the two pieces. I don't know. What I'm going to do is do some CAD here, which we haven't done in a while. Cardboard aided drafting. So let's break out the cardboard and see if we can make a patch panel. Okay, so the result of our cardboard aided drafting is a pretty perfect piece. We got our crease right in the right spot, and I didn't show you guys the bending, but I don't know how to press brake yet. I should probably find a good one, but I don't really do sheet metal enough to buy one and take up the space. They take up a lot of space. So I just do it in a bench vise, and I'm just very, very careful, but I got good bends out of it. So basically all we need to do now is cut inside the lines, not outside, inside. And then we'll weld all along here and up there and along this back side. And then we'll just tap the rest of it into shape as we go. And we will have a perfect OEM-like patch to go right there. And then this gap, we have enough material right here to fold it back in and kind of pound it into place, cut along the gap, weld it right in. And once it's all ground and done and coated, you'll never know we did it. So let's start cutting. Okay, so we got her cut out, we got her bent. The fit is like absolutely perfect. You can't tell in this corner. I got to pull it up a little bit, which is almost impossible to do from the top. But the gaps are perfect. It's going to weld in so easy. I even drilled the holes so we can replace the spot welds. There'll be plug welds at that point into that floor support. And basically what I'm going to do is start in the corner and then just tap the thing in all the way around. By the time I get here, it'll tap in. I'm a little tight on this edge, but I think by the time I tap all this down, it's going to be perfect. Now, I just want to point out before I weld it, do it once and do it right, guys. If you're never going to see it again, spray it with weld-through primer. I was really, really lucky. This is like the first thing I've taken apart where it was in better shape than I thought. This floor support is like perfect. So weld-through primer, everything. and then replace the plug welds if you can. Otherwise, the thing's going to flop around. So everything's ground down. It's ready to weld. This was supposed to be spot welded to the rocker here, but we're going to seam weld it. And the reason why is because when you replace the factory sheet metal, you never get the seam as good as the factory did. Like, you just never do. And also, there's some places on the factory tubs where they have the same type of thing, like right here, where you can see that's just like, it's not even a full seam weld. It's just spot welded, but it's a lap joint, so it's kind of ugly. Basically, you do this all the way across, and then you grind the radius in it, and it looks absolutely beautiful. It'll look better than the factory did it. They need seam sealer there. I probably won't use seam sealer there. I will on the inside, on the bottom. But anyway, let's get that welded in, and we'll be pretty much done with the passenger side, so let's go. And that's pretty much a wrap on the passenger side, at least prior to fully seam welding. That panel is in. It's pretty much beautiful. Like, it looks OEM. The only thing I think you could point to is that bend is definitely not the right radius, but like, I don't know. How crazy do you want to get under a layer of sound deadening and under a carpet with, you know, sound deadening mat under it and stuff? You'll never see it. But it's good to know that it is really original, because this is a super valuable truck, so I want it to be as good as possible. The front looks good. The section between the pan and the pan we fabricated is like perfect, all perfect butt welds, no gap. Everything is right in the world, except right there. There is a gap, but I'll fix that. Yeah, I even got the plug welds in where it goes into the floor support. Life is good. Passenger side's pretty much done. Now, we've done a lot of time lapse. I pretty much showed you guys how to do everything individually. So what I'm going to do, for the interest of the length of this video and also my self-imposed deadline on this project of getting as much done as possible in my 3-day weekend, I'm going to just pop in some headphones, stop filming, and I am going to weld the whole passenger floor and do some of the other stuff. Fortunately for you guys, from the comforts of your own home, it's going to seem like no time went by, so I'll see you in 1 second. Okay, guys. So it's now about, I don't know, 8:30 at night. I've been out here for probably 11 and a half hours today. I got a little bit of a late start. We got a lot done. I am very tired, but we got a lot done. So, the passenger floor, done. Again, with the exception of this. We'll start cutting parts out of the other truck tomorrow, but it's all seam welded everywhere else. This little panel that we made, which turned out absolutely fantastic, very original, completely seam welded all the way around. The door sill is seam welded all the way down. And then I went on to the driver's side. The Por 15 did show up, so I painted the cab mount, and then I trimmed this panel a little bit more. And I gotta say, the fitment on the driver's side is 10 times better than the passenger side. Passenger side was good. Like, once I grind it, it'll look good, but this was just awesome. I zipped right around it. There was really no gaps to fill anywhere. So the whole front is completely seam welded and down to right about the door opening. Everything else is spot welded. And the only 2 gaps I missed are like up in there. You might be able to see that where the cab mount hits it, because the cab mount needs to get pulled up, and then I'll do the plug welds into the floor there, and then I'll weld those. I didn't want to weld through that just in case I hit the cab mount and then it wouldn't come up all the way. Like, I would just weld it right there with a little gap. Anyway, this all fits extraordinarily well, so this is going to be next tomorrow. We'll cut it here, come all the way across, do the exact same thing we did before, and then it's going to be on to like parts coming out of the other truck. So this corner over here where it's smashed in, these little things we gotta just make patches for under the seat belts. I can't get the seat belts out, so that's a whole nother thing we'll probably approach tomorrow. We'll also do this side between the doors, which is going to be a little bit more of a pain in the butt than I thought. I was taking a closer look at it. We do have a little tiny piece of rocker. I don't know, maybe a 2-inch section I need right there. So we'll cut that out of the other truck because it has just enough rocker, I checked. And then we're going to be in the home stretch of this thing. So we got a little more work to do. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Good morning, gang. Welcome to day 3 of our little cab restoration extravaganza video. Got a little bit of an earlier start today. I'm just ripping the Honey Badger over to the auto parts store. I'm going to grab some tools and then grab a breakfast sandwich, my obligatory coffee. Can't get started without that. and then I will see you guys back in the shop in a couple minutes here. We'll talk about what we're going to do today. All right, we are back in the shop. We're ready to get moving on day 3. And I think I got a plan for what we're going to do today. So we are definitely going to finish up the front floors. We're going to make that patch panel. We are going to take care of the floors all the way back here. We're going to deal with these seat belts because the only thing I did off camera today is I went and got a couple Torx bits because I snapped one off in that bolt. And this one, I snapped off a T50 Impact 1/2-inch drive Torx in there. So it's safe to say these are never coming off. So we got to get under the truck and cut the bolts off with the angle grinder so we can get those out so we can fix the steel under them. And then we'll make new anchor plates. We're going to fix this little thing right here, that little thing right there. Same thing on the other side. And then the floor will be 100% complete. However, before we get to that, pretty nice day outside today. So I'm thinking we go outside and we cut all our sheet metal off our organ donor red truck out there. So we'll get this piece off of it and we'll get this piece off of it. I think that back corners we're going to save till later. And yeah, that's how we're going to get the day started. Let's see how far we can get back to our 3-day cab restoration. So before we go hacking apart the other truck, definitely important to get some measurements and see where you want to cut. Now, this is really annoying because whoever did this, it looks like they torch cut it, honestly. That looks like a torch cut to me. They went all the way through the rocker, which is a big pain in the butt. And they did not just drill the spot weld. So now there's really nowhere for me to weld except in that seam, which is going to look really stupid. So probably I'm going to cut a bunch more off the red truck. I'll probably go right down the pillar and then across the bottom so I know I have enough material. And I'll probably cut like right here down. And then we'll bring it in and figure out what we're going to do. This is relatively simple. I'm just going to have to measure it up and cut straight through right there, and then we'll just weld it in. That's going to take 2 seconds. And I already took the transmission tunnel cover off the red truck, and this is like perfect. It's really funny, the more I'm digging into it, how the red truck, the only good things on the red truck are the things that this cab needs. So that's pretty awesome. It's almost like these two were meant to be cannibalized and make one classic bent side crew cab. So I'm going to go hack that thing up outside. See you back in here in a minute. So we got our pieces hacked out. This is for that trans tunnel on the passenger side. This is the little piece of rocker we need on the driver's side rear door area. And this obviously is the whole piece of sheet metal between the passenger side doors. This is going to be a pain in the butt for a couple of reasons that we're going to go over in a little while when we look at it closer. But first, I'm going to clean these up and just sandblast them since I have them off inside and out. So they're all ready to install. So let me take care of that real quick. Okay, so I sandblasted this piece, which came out perfect. It doesn't even have surface rust on it. What it did have was a ton of like tar right in the joint. I get the feeling maybe this thing had like an exhaust smell coming through the floor. So they took the tunnel cover off and just tarred the shit out of it. So that was a pain in the butt to get off. I had to acetone the majority of it off. And for those of you that have ever sandblasted anything, you know, sandblasters don't do well with soft stuff. So it took forever to sandblast it, but I got it. I also sandblasted the rocker. It's over there. Anyway, this thing fits right in there like that. This is going to be a real easy one because you can just line up the holes, and we have this nice shape right here, this like half moon cut out. So we can line that up. I got my lines marked on it already. So I'm going to lop that out of there. And this is where you have to kind of think about what you're doing, because this line, you're going to want to take the whole line, right? Because this thing's going to come down some amount because it's sitting on top, right? But on the sides, it's not. So you want to go on the inside of your line on the sides and then on the outside of the line on the bottom. Point being, always think about that when you're cutting sheet metal out to do this. But anyway, once I get this thing in here, this is going to be 100% solid and really nice. So I'm just going to get it done for you real quick. All right, guys, that's a wrap on the passenger side. This is done, 100% seam welded all the way through. And it looks good. I do have a little bit of like sag on the floor here, but remember, the body mount is not welded in all the way because I ordered a replacement for that. So I will spot weld the new body mount on later. I think the thing to do is probably to put it on the frame, get the other 3 body mounts bolted up, and then put that one on to make sure it lines up with the frame. So we'll do that later. On to the passenger side. We're going to make this panel for the passenger side, except it's a lot bigger because it goes up into here and up over this little angle right here. But fortunately for you guys, I already made the cardboard template. So it sits in just like that. It lines up right to the edge of where the sheet metal used to end, and it eliminates all the rust. So I got an angle right there, an angle right there, and an angle right there. It comes up into the seat mount area this time because I got a little rust hole right there I want to get rid of. So, yeah, I'm going to go chop that out of the 16 gauge steel, and then we'll move on with our lives. Once we get that in, we can bend this over, we can weld all that up, we can weld all the way up the seam, and then we'll weld the cab mount in on this side. And that's going to be it for the front of this truck. We're going to wrap up the rear after that. And that'll be pretty much the end of that. So, let's get this cut out of steel. Okay, so I got this piece of metal cut out. It's really close. Probably got to bend back a little bit on that joint. And this joint has to go a little further. And this joint is barely even bent. But it's good enough where I can start marking it out and cutting out the perimeter. So that's what I'm going to do next. I do have a little bit of concern right here. I might need a little bit of filler in the middle, which kind of sucks. I really want the two pieces to meet together, but it might not work in this situation. So we're about at the point where we can trim this thing out, cut it all in, and then we'll do some final bending, get it tacked, and we'll be done with the whole passenger side at that point, or the driver's side, that is to say. So let's get the original floorboard cut out. All right, so we got it all cut out and ready to weld in. So I'm just going to go ahead and get this thing finished bent, tacked in there, and this is what it looks like welded. All right, boys and girls. Driver's side is completely done. We got our panel completely seam welded in. We got our floorboard completely seam welded in. We got our cab mount spot welded back in on the front. It's solid. This thing does flex in the middle a little bit, but they kind of get that way. So that means we're in the home stretch on this floor. All we got left is that little hole right there and then this back area. So the good thing is we're like 85% of the way done. The bad thing is that means I have to crawl under the back and cut those seatbelt nuts off the bottom, which I have been dreading doing. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and we probably got a little time left in this video to catch one more time lapse so you guys can enjoy my misery under there. So let's go. Okay, guys, I am throwing in the towel on the 3-day cab restoration. I'm just completely worn out. It's late, day 3 here, which is Monday night, and I just got nothing left in me. I've been working on it for like 10 hours today. It was like 12 yesterday, and probably 8 the day before. But the floor's done. So this whole rear corner, done. This is all seam welded, seam welded, seam welded, and what took me longer than I thought because I ran into a couple like pinholes I had to go and fix. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pinholes that I plug welded. Fortunately for me on those, there was like really good material right around them. It was just like a little pinhole, so I just welded them up and ground them down. But yeah, all seam welded. And also, I didn't really mention when I was doing it, but this is made out of 12 gauge steel. That's why you saw me like hammering on it to get it in there. That's a really heavy piece, and that's because the seatbelt mount goes through it. And I will put like a 4x4 inch plate of 1/4 inch steel under the floor with a nut welded to it when I'm done, because remember I had to cut those nuts off. Past that, our driver's floor is completely done. Everything looks good. Our passenger floor is completely done. It looks great, actually. All of it really came out great. So that's going to be it. We didn't really finish the cab. There's still some more work to do, but it's like 90% of the way there. We do have the elephants in the room, though, which we're going to do in another episode, which is this rear corner, which I'm still kind of thinking about how I want to do that. We got to do this guy right here, and then we're going to have to fix that roof. But at the end of the day, the first shoe to drop had to be the floor, just to stabilize the cab, because now I have to put doors on it, so I can do that rear corner, and I can do between the doors on the passenger side. I need the doors to get the gaps right, so now we can hang doors on this thing and move on. But that's going to be it for today's episode. For those of you that are still here, please mention in the comments, like, what do you think about the format of these videos? Like, do you want me to show more? Do you want me to show less? It's always kind of a quandary for me what you guys need to see. One thing's for sure, in this video, I think I showed you guys enough that, like, you could tackle any sort of sheet metal fabrication project or, like, restoration of a car body on your own. Like, I think I showed you enough samples of how to do this and gave enough lessons to at least start feeling your way through it. So let me know what you're thinking in the comments, because I just want to make it better. The only reason I do this is so I can, like, document the knowledge and stuff. So anyway, that's going to be it for today's episode. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time on Ran When Parked.